Hello students, welcome to today's class. Today, as a part of health psychology paper, we are going to talk about theories of health behavior. The main objectives in this lesson are to understand definition and purpose of a theory. We are going to talk about some of the theories of health behavior, which is protection motivation theory, theory of reasoned action, and theory of planned behavior. Now, before getting into these theories, let us understand what is the purpose of a theory. Theories help us to explain or predict behavior, inform policy, guide practices, and also guide research. According to Shelley Taylor, as a field, health psychology has made substantial contributions to the understanding of healthy behaviors and to the comprehension of myriad factors that undermine health and often lead to illness. He said that much of the strongest work has involved providing theoretical and conceptual frameworks to elucidate the practice of health behaviors, the role of stress in affecting illness and illness behavior. These theoretical conceptualization constitute major contributions. For example, it is difficult for physicians to understand why 93% of patients fail to adhere to certain aspects of their treatment regimes. Social psychological models not only make sense of this data but suggest ways of upgrading them. Now let us discuss some of the very important theories of health behavior. In health psychology, there are many models that explain health behavior. These models progressively improved one over the other, and some of them address the limitations of the other models. The first theory which we are going to talk about is protection motivation theory. It was Rogers who developed this protection motivation theory. Protection motivation theory that was originally created to help clarify fear appeals. This theory deals with how people cope with and make decisions in the time of harmful or stressful events in life. These decisions are a way of protecting oneself from perceived threats. The theory attempts to explain and predict what motivates people to change their behavior. The protection motivation theory proposes that we protect ourselves based on 4 factors. First is the perceived severity of a threatening event. The second one is the perceived probability of the occurrence or vulnerability. The third one is the efficacy of the recommended preventive behavior, and finally the perceived self-efficacy. The protective motivation theory is comprised of 2 components, threat appraisal and cognitive appraisal. First, we will understand what is threat appraisal. This is based on how threatened an individual feels. Take an example of bowel cancer. The severity is said to be high if an individual feels that bowel cancer is a serious illness. If the severity is high, then it also affects the vulnerability. The vulnerability is high if an individual feels if he or she have high chances of getting bowel cancer. Therefore, high sensitivity and high vulnerability leads to higher threat. Then talking about coping appraisal. It consists of 2 components, self-efficacy and response effectiveness. For example, self-efficacy is high if a person feels that they are confident of doing or carrying out a particular behavior. For example, if a person is confident that he is able to change his diet. Similarly, response effectiveness will be high if a person believes that whatever change has been brought up will improve their health. For example, here in this case, changing the diet would improve their health. Both threat appraisal and coping appraisal lead to how a person feels about their health. The threat appraisal assesses the severity of the situation and examines how serious the situation is. The coping appraisal is how one responds to this situation. The coping appraisal consists of both efficacy and also self-efficacy. Efficacy is the individual's expectancy that carrying out recommendations can remove the threat, whereas self-efficacy is the belief that one's ability to execute the recommended courses of action successfully. The threat appraisal deals with how threatened one feels by the threat. For example, how threatened is an individual by possibility that he or she may have bowel cancer. In threat appraisal, the mind evaluates the various factors that are likely to influence one to get involved in potentially unhealthy behavior like smoking or using drugs. Perceived vulnerability and perceived severity are two sets of beliefs from which threat appraisals are derived. Perceived vulnerability is the individual's belief that he is susceptible to an illness that is potential health threat. For example, an individual may be asked to rate his chances of using Likert scale of how likely he is to get lung cancer based on his smoking habits. Feeling that the health threat will have severe consequences in one's life is called as perceived severity. This is measured in terms of choosing from responses like I agree, strongly agree when given sentences like AIDS is a very dangerous disease. Then there is fear arousal. It is a means of assessing how much fear has been evoked as a result of perceived vulnerability and severity. Individuals can be asked how they feel about a thought of having a particular disease. Responses like not worried, very anxious are the indicators of levels of regarding the threat. Then we talk about coping appraisal. Here one evaluates the various factors that are likely to ensure that one engages in a recommended response that is preventive in nature. For example, changing a diet. There are three sets of beliefs involved here. First one is response efficacy. It is a belief that engaging in a certain behavior will result in the health threat getting reduced. For example, here there is a feeling that changing my diet would improve my health. The second one, self-efficacy, deals with the belief that one has the required capabilities to engage in a health behavior. This is measured by responses to statements like I am confident that I can change my diet, or it is easy to wake up every day and exercise, with words like I agree, I disagree, etc. The last set of beliefs, the perceived response cost. It deals with the costs that one attaches to the performance of the health behavior. For example, one should feel comfortable in changing the diet. It should not further disrupt their health. Sometimes, if an individual is convinced that the rewards of not adopting a particular health reward are higher than the benefits received from adopting, he may continue his negative habits. For example, continuing to use drugs because it provides an escape from life, or continuing to eat unhealthy fast food because it's cheaper than healthy food. The theory therefore says that in order for an individual to adapt a healthy behavior, they need to believe that there is a severe threat that is likely to occur, and that by adopting a healthy behavior, they can effectively reduce the threat. The individual should also be convinced that he is capable of engaging in the behavior, which should not cost him a lot. A measure of intention to engage in the recommended preventive behavior is the most common index of protection motivation. This theory explains why people engage in unhealthy practices and offers suggestions for changing those behaviors. It is educational and motivational. Primary prevention, like taking measures to combat the risk of developing a health problem, for example controlling weight or preventing high BP. Secondary prevention means taking steps to prevent a condition from becoming worse, like for example remembering to take daily medication to control BP. Next, we are going to talk about theory of reasoned action. The theory of reasoned action is a model that finds its origins in the field of social psychology. The model was developed by Fishbane and Adson. They define the links between attitude, subjective norms and behavior intentions of the individual. According to this model, a person's behavior is determined by his behavioral intention to perform it. This intention is itself determined by person's attitude and his subjective norms towards the behavior. Attitude here is a sum of beliefs attributed to some particular. It varies as per attributions and beliefs. For example, students have their attitude towards the exams. Their performance in the exams has an optimum dependency upon the attitudes of them towards the exams. Or the problem solving ability of people depend on their attitude towards the problem. Next is subjective norms, which are mostly situational. It consists our opinion about the subjective behavior. The person's opinion can be influenced by several factors like society, economy, politics, demographic factors, etc. As per the founder of this theory, subjective norm is the person's perception that most people who are important to him or her think he should or should not perform the behavior in question. For example, Jim's parents don't like watching TV. They believe that it kills brain tissues. In Jim's class, everybody watches TV and they talk a lot about movies and other TV shows. Here, Jim's subjective norms toward TV may depend upon how he is being influenced and who makes a deeper impression on his mind, parents or his classmates. Then we talk about behavioral intention. Behavioral intention means the person's ability or capability to intend to perform a particular behavior. It is found to predict the behavior. It is rather considered as the function of both attitudes and behavioral norms. For example, Radha is a kind of talkative person. She tries hard to keep her mouth shut, but she keeps talking a lot and never kept a secret, so people began to call her BBC Network. Once she came to know about her nickname and got so depressed. She didn't want to be called like that, and for that she tried to keep her mouth shut and talk to others only when it is needed. Here, Radha's intent to behavior in another way, which was formed by her attitude and subjective norms. This theory can be summarized by the following equation. Behavior intention is equal to attitude plus subjective norms. According to theory of reasoned action, the attitude of a person towards a behavior is determined by his beliefs on the consequences of his behavior multiplied by his evaluation of these consequences. Beliefs are defined by the person's subjective probability that performing a particular behavior will produce specific results. The subjective norms are determined by opinion of others and also motivation to comply. Together, both attitude and behavior and also subjective norm lead to intention and then behavior. This model therefore suggests that external stimuli influence attitudes by modifying the structure of person's beliefs. Moreover, behavioral intention is also determined by the subjective norms that are themselves determined by the normative beliefs of an individual and by his motivation to comply to these norms. Next, we are going to talk about theory of planned behavior. The theory of planned behavior is an extension of theory of reasoned action. According to the theorist, the need for this new model resulted from limitations of behavior on which people had little control. Adson added therefore a third element to this model, which according to him has an influence on person's intention to perform a behavior, which he called it as perceived behavioral control. Perceived behavioral control refers to readily available resources, skills and opportunities as well as the person's own perception towards the importance of achieving the results. The concept of perceived behavioral control is close to the concept of self-efficacy of Bandura. For example, if two individuals have the strong intention to learn a new language, the one who thinks that he will succeed in mastering it is the one who will tend to persevere more than the other who doubts his capabilities. Adson model uses three variables: attitudes, subjective norms and perceived behavioral control to demonstrate the direct influence that they have on the behavioral intention. The behavioral intention in turn influences the behavior. This aspect is explained in the figure which you see on the screen. We'll take an example of health behavior of exercise. If a person believes the consequences of exercise will be positive and his beliefs are also approved by his friends, his evaluation and belief lead to a positive attitude towards health. Then the second aspect is subjective norms. First is the normative beliefs, which is influenced by social norms of the society, meaning how exercise is viewed in the society. Generally, If exercise is viewed as a positive aspect, the person also develops a positive attitude towards it. But if it has a negative attitude, like for example, if too much of exercise leads to heart attacks or something like that, then the person also develops a negative attitude towards it. Connecting to normative beliefs, there is also motivation of the person. The person should also be motivated enough to exercise daily. So both with normative beliefs and a motivation to comply to this exercise, the person forms the behavior intention. Then the third aspect is perceived behavioral control, which is affected by opportunities, like in this case having a gym in your community or access to healthy food, etc. And also how much the person thinks he can achieve, meaning his own confidence, like how much he can achieve this particular goal of exercising daily. So therefore all these three lead to behavior intention, that is ability of an individual to carry out a particular behavior. This in turn leads to the final behavior, here in this case to exercise daily. Next we will go through a case study. This is the case of motivating people to take regular health checkups. The Government of India proposes to educate people regarding the importance of regular health checkups to reduce incidence of cancer. As a health professional, they ask you to highlight the important components of behavior that will motivate people to take regular health checkups. What do you propose? You explain the components of theory of reasoned action. According to this model, a person's behavior is determined by his behavioral intention to perform it. This intention is itself determined by the person's attitudes and his subjective norms toward the behavior. So to make people take regular screening for cancer, you point out that their attitudes and norms need to be positive in this direction. You point out that this theory can be summarized by the following equation: behavioral intention is equal to attitudes plus subjective norms. According to theory of reasoned action, the attitude of a person towards a behavior is determined by his beliefs and the consequences of this behavior, which is also multiplied by his evaluation of these consequences. Beliefs are defined by the person's subjective probability that performing a particular behavior will produce specific results. So, the beliefs of an individual to go for screening should be positive. You then go on to highlight that this model believes that external stimuli influence attitudes by modifying the structure of the person's beliefs. Moreover, behavior intention is also determined by the subjective norms that are themselves determined by normative beliefs of an individual and by the motivation to comply to these norms. So both are changeable towards the positive direction for seeking screening for cancer. Thus, theory of reasoned action help us to understand the health behavior of an individual. Now let us summarize what we have learned in today's lesson. Theories help us to explain or predict behavior, inform policy, guide practice, and also direct research. Social psychological theories or models not only make sense of data but suggest ways of ameliorating disease conditions. In health psychology, there are many models that explain health behavior. These models progressively improved one over the other, and some of them address the limitations of the other models. The protection motivation theory proposes that we protect ourselves based on 4 factors: the perceived severity of a threatening event, the perceived probability of the occurrence or the vulnerability, the efficacy of the recommended preventive behavior, and the perceived self-efficacy. Then the theory of reasoned action is a model that finds its origins in the field of social psychology. This model defines the links between beliefs, attitudes, norms, intentions, and behaviors of individuals. According to this model, a person's behavior is determined by its behavioral intention to perform it. This intention is itself determined by the person's attitudes and his subjective norms towards the behavior. The theory of planned behavior was developed as a need for this new model resulted from the limitations on the behavior on which people had little control. Adson added therefore a third element to his model, which according to him has an influence on a person's intention to perform a behavior, which he called it as perceived behavioral control.